Hi, everybody. My name is Simon Hardie. I'm the co-founder of Findexable and the Global Fintech Index. And here with me today is Mr. Elliott Limb over in Amsterdam, the Chief Customer Officer at Mambu. Hi, Elliott. How are you doing?
Hi, Simon. Really good, thank you. The sun's shining and it's suddenly summer, so things are looking good.
Excellent. Good. So it's been an interesting year and a half, to say the least. What's it been like to be building a fast-growing, very successful fintech business through the last year? And what's have there been some positive outcomes from this enforced digitalization that the world's gone through from your business perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's been a few things that have changed for very much the positive. Obviously, it's been a horrible time for all of us, and it's been very difficult. Not just people's health, but also the mental awareness, the way to move business. You can't get in front of customers, makes things more difficult on the face of it. But actually, some of the trends have made this really interesting for us. As you said, this drive to digitization. People in general are seeing digital usability, capability, a different way of working in day-to-day lives, and certainly in the way they bank and they operate. The biggest change actually is I think it's expedited that shift to a more modern solution, a more modern SaaS solution. There used to be a perceived technology risk of digitization or doing something new, which has moved to actually a realization of a business risk of not doing anything actually outweighs it. And so I think that building for an unknown future, the fintech world is behind and trying to drive agility, that's become BAU. And I think it's expedited things such as, in the banking industry, 5-year transformations are no longer going to be the de rigueur, right? It's got to be something that's a lot quicker, return on investment, looking at how do we get that agility, how do we get better customer centricity. So actually for us on a business level, it's been very good. And I actually think for the industry in general, it's really started to drive innovation a lot faster.
Great, thank you for that. Has the pandemic, what has it done in terms of making the business case for fintech firms, and how different is it building and scaling a fintech company to a more traditional incumbent style financial services operation?
Pros and cons on both sides. So I think it's very different. So I think that the pandemic certainly, as I say, has driven forward the agility, the different ways of thinking, and trying to drive different attitudes, different working styles. If you take an example of something that a modern fintech in the pandemic is capable of, there's been changing regulations around the world. Example that comes to mind, India changed the regulation so it would give payment holidays on interest to people because of the pandemic to fuel financial stimulus, etc. As a modern fintech and the way this operates, we're agile enough to be able to build those changes into the system in a matter of days. We are capable of driving new business to drive new customers into new products, new segmentations, new markets. Whereas with a older vertical type player, one of the more monolithical systems, they rely a lot on PS. They rely on people being on site. They rely a lot more on being in data centers, being with the customer. We've done all of that remotely. And I think that's put us in a really nice way to drive the agility. I think it's also, if you look at not just the vendor side, look at the bank side. So if you look at the way that banks have thought about things, having to suddenly work from home, work remotely, if you're running the center operations for a large tier 1, tier 2 bank, that's very different to actually those low operation, low touch point, much more high tech positions you have without that operational intersection with a lot of the neobanks, a lot of the challenges. So I think anybody who was driven more digital, be it on the bank side, the vendor side, and has that agility and the ability to really sort of look at the market, that mindset has helped people as well as obviously the process and the tech behind it.
Global Fintech Rankings this year, we've seen lots of new cities and countries added. It's clear that the market is becoming more diverse. There's more competition. What does that? How is the role of fintech and what is the importance of having a mission for a financial services? A fintech company. What is the importance of having a mission to enabling you to succeed? And do you have to compete in a different way? Are you having to think about collaboration as being core to what you do to enable to be successful now?
I think collaboration is 100% core. I think you've used exactly the right words. We call it composable banking at Mambu, which is basically around, we believe in being the best at one thing, and we believe in building that collaborative marketplace, building the ecosystem. Really, all of the big wins I'm seeing, and it's something I've thought about for many years, even before joining Mambu. I think that building better banking for everyone comes through collaboration. You move from a bank-centric model to a customer-centric model. You look at those endpoints and you start driving innovation. And a big part around this that actually is reflected in the report is around regulators, the changing roles of regulators to actually drive innovation rather than get in the way of innovation, which arguably you could say they've done in the past. And that's really helped, I think. So when you look at the positioning in the market and saying, like I say, being good at one thing and building relationships across other players, across that ecosystem, but beyond where people have seen it previously. It's not just about having API connectivity. It's not just about, hey, look, we work with these guys, we've got referenceability. It moves into a co-culture type environment. And if you can actually get that shared value and that shared outcomes and align all that and measure it and get fair share of wallet, and build a culture that works across the entire ecosystem from customer, supply chain, all the vendors, that's a big game changer. And that really brings that agility and the ability to actually drive a future market that makes a lot more sense in these times.
Good, thank you for that. So the Global Fintech Rankings launched at the end of June. This year, it's powered by Mambu. You, as Chief Customer Officer, obviously integral to the success of the company as you scale. What you've just talked about is very much in line with what we've been thinking about, which is this sort of role of fintech as a bridge between markets, between operational cultures, and enabling different industries to come together and transact better, faster, more conveniently for users, whether they're consumers or businesses. We've launched the Global Fintech Rankings to kind of map ecosystems. And to you, what's the benefit of enabling sort of greater transparency, visibility in terms of how fintech ecosystems are developing and expanding around the world? And what do you see as the kind of opportunity with what we're trying to do around the Global Fintech Index?
Well, I think it's a phenomenal thing, to be honest. The fintechs in general are changing the way that people save, spend, invest, and everything else that goes with it. What you're doing is clearly helping to define the digital banking future. It's an enormous undertaking to bring together all of that information. Where is the innovation happening? Why is it happening there? And for ourselves and for the rest of the fintech and banking industry, I want to really thank you guys for what you've done, because that undertaking is something that you go in with your eyes open, and there's a lot of changing, there's a lot of things moving in the market, and you make the big point in there around the fact that it's a challenge for us all to change how we drive the market moving forward, bridging the gap being the underarching piece. And bridging that gap, we need this sort of analysis, sort of marketplace narrative that shows us where things are going. Because for somebody like Mambu, where we see a lot of opportunities in the market, different ways to drive and pull forward in the way we operate, it has to be that ecosystem. There has to be that collaboration. And I say we believe in being the best at what we do and working with the best at what they do. So knowing where those players are, knowing what they're doing, knowing how that operates and works together, it builds something that's been missing from the market for a long time. I talked earlier about moving from a bank-centric model to a customer-centric model. Yeah. The fintech-centric adoption of this customer model means we all have to be pulling in the same direction. And I say it's not just about the APIs, webhooks, data alignment, the different ways of working. It's very much around making sure that we can see those opportunities collectively. And for us, Mambu, to support a report like this is a fundamental for us in part of our growing up, right? We've evolved from a startup to a scale up. Yeah. And we think that this sort of thing has got to be really rewarded in the industry, because this is actually how we define the future of banking. This is the only way we bridge that gap that you talk about in the report. And so great work.
Good. Thank you, Elliot. And thank you for those very gracious comments. The report and the rankings launched at the end of June, and you'll be able to download it. The link will be on the screen. Thanks for being with us, and Elliot, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.